Hello, everybody, and welcome to the football experience brought to you by On the Pod. Nev is back from his holiday, so it's myself, Caleb, and Nev. How you doing, Nev? Good holiday?
It was pretty good. We were talking just off the air, and it got off to a stressful start because I thought my bus was leaving. I was convinced my bus was leaving like half an hour later than what it actually was, and basically had to sprint to the bus station and sprinting in 30 plus degree heat. It wasn't fun. I was left extremely parched, and for the first like hour of the bus ride, I was just like sort of like I had that like dry cough. Like that's like how dry like I guess my lungs got. So it wasn't comfortable. It didn't get off to a comfortable start, but it
Well,
was a very nice week.
I definitely feel for whoever had to sit next to you on that bus ride after a sprint in that weather,
Luckily, I
all
was
sweaty
solo.
and with a nice dry. Oh, there you go. Lucky.
Yeah,
But I trust the rest of the holiday was fun. But one of the downsides of you going away for that week, you didn't actually watch any football from this week, any full games. Am I right in saying that?
yeah. Look, that was. I wouldn't really say that was any fault of my own. It was, but like there wasn't with my TV streaming service. It turns out that they lost the rights to the Premier League, and I didn't find
Oh,
out until like Friday night. Like, cause like with this streaming service, you can rewind it and watch on demand and stuff like that. And after my whole plan was to, like to go out to dinner with my missus and then come back and watch the Arsenal game. And without knowing the result. And I get back, and I even brought my tablet with me just for that, just so I can have like a nice, comfortable viewing experience, like not watching it on my phone. And I'm scrolling through the sports channels, and there's no Premier League. I'm like, what the hell? Like, where's the game? And then I go to Saturday to see what the
fucking feeling.
to see what the TV guide is on that, and like there's no Premier League on Saturday either. I'm like, that's impossible. And then I go to the TV guide that has like I guess the other sports channels. So I imagine it like Optus in Australia, Optus versus Foxtel. So you have different sports channels with them. And I go to have a look at the TV guide for those ones, and yeah, they have the Premier League. So they have that those sports channels have the Premier League, the Italian League, the French League, the Spanish League, and the Champions League. So they have everything. I think I only have the German league. So maybe I can just become an expert like German football pundit or something.
There you go, expert German commentator. Nev.
Yeah.
No, it seems like it's time for you to jump ship, but don't start me on streaming services and football and the way they spread them around. At least it seems like the other one has the bulk of your football, so you might be all right if you could jump over to that.
Yeah, I just need to have a look at pricing and setting it up because I think with two of them, like they have like the app that you can like just put on your tablet or smartphone, or if you have like an Android TV, you can like put it onto that. They also have like the actual like I guess satellite where they come and install it at your house. So, but like I just need to have a look at the pricing for the app, just because like they don't put they put the pricing for like normal channels, but they don't put the pricing for the sports package. So I'm like, okay, so this costs like $10. How much is it extra for the
Oh,
sports package? They say
love
you
that
can,
one.
yeah, they say you can add
Oh,
it, but they don't tell you how much it costs. So yeah, it's just
and that's all you need. That's all you ever want is the sport. We don't care about the rest.
yeah, why don't these guys just do like sports package, that's it. No normal TV, like just the 10, 15, 20 sports channels and that's it. Just have a sports package, not normal TV plus sports. No, I don't want that. I just want sports, that's it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to have to figure that
I
out
don't I don't
hopefully by
even
this
know what
weekend.
normal TV. Yeah. I don't even know what normal TV is anymore. It's just all streaming services anyway. So as
Yeah.
long as I got sport, that's it. So obviously, with that being said, um, we're going to have to maybe change it up a little bit this week. And luckily for you, I watched probably 10 games over the weekend, pretty much full games as well, because I'm just so pumped to have football back, and was really interested to see what most of the teams we've talked about in previews or in our transfer pod from a couple of weeks back. Just really curious to see what they had done. So I guess the way we could play this to make it a little bit more interactive is, and we'll start from the very top. I guess we'll go in chronological order. And from the very top would be the Friday night fixture in the Premier League and Arsenal versus Palace. And I'm guessing for this one, would probably have a few questions that you would want to know how your team Arsenal performed. So I'll throw it to you, and any holes that you want filled in from what you've missed, I'll do my best to describe what I saw
Yeah.
from the weekend.
Well, I managed to find those sort of like dodgy highlights on YouTube that people upload, like with I managed to find like an extended highlights for like 8 to 10 minutes. And it seemed like, I guess for the first 15, 20, maybe even half an hour, Arsenal were just like on top of Crystal Palace, judging from the highlights. But obviously highlights, they can paint a different picture to what actually happens in reality. And also by accounts of like what pundits have said, and also fans. Obviously I watch a little bit of Arsenal fan TV. Judging from what they said, like they said the first 15, 20 minutes, like Arsenal were on top of them, and they only got their goal, I think, in the 35th minute, if I'm not mistaken. But they had a couple of good chances before that. But then the second half, it seemed like they sort of, I don't know if they were pinned back or if they sat back, because obviously, I can't tell from the highlights. But it seemed like they were in control, and Crystal Palace did have a couple of chances. I think they had like a point blank header that was saved, and I think there might have been one other chance from memory. But overall, I guess getting a non-Arsenal fans perspective, like just want to know what you thought, and whether I guess the fans can get excited. And I know it's only the first game, but considering that Crystal Palace is a bogey team for, I guess, even Man City, like they're a bogey team for everyone. It's a very hard place to go to, Selhurst Park. But considering they got over that hump, how do you see, I guess, maybe Arsenal's season unfolding? Because they generally start the season with a loss or a draw, and considering they got over a bogey team and a team that they only picked up 1 point off last season, just want to get your thoughts, I suppose, on I guess their performance and what you might expect from them going forward.
I thought Arsenal, probably out of all the games I watched this season, were definitely one of the more impressive performers. That first 20 odd minute spell, they looked like they came out for the season and they meant business. So really impressed with that. They had Zinchenko. Will be interesting to see whether he's the regular starter since coming in, because obviously Tierney was available for this game and he comes on late. But they choose to go with Zinchenko from the start. And I guess it looked like Arteta wanted to shore up that midfield with Zinchenko, obviously, who naturally likes to come inside, and with Ben White sort of coming inside as well. He's less inclined to overlap. And I guess he wants the solidity of Ben White being a sort of more defensive-minded right back behind Saka and Ødegaard, who I've got to say in pre-season and now in the season, Saka and Ødegaard are linking up fantastically well. Ødegaard's always picking up those pockets of space. Saka's given them so much width, and he looks really fit this season, really quick. Not that I would say he's ever been unfit, but this season he looks like he can take players on and he can beat them maybe more regularly. It'll be interesting to see how that develops, because like you say, it is one game in. So it's hard to say. Arsenal might be, in terms of the teams in the Premier League, they might be the highest ceiling, lowest floor team for me still. I think going into the season and a player who I haven't touched on yet for their performance, but Jesus is going to be massive. If For me, it comes down to, do I fear Arsenal at the moment? I still don't fear Arsenal at the moment. I think they've improved. If you look at the personnel, the way they've come out for the season, a 2-0 win, a clean sheet at Selhurst, a really good performance, because I think you saw the game the right way. It was, or from what you saw from the highlights, it was 20 minutes dominance, sort of evened out at the end of the first half, but still Arsenal on top. They get their goal from the set piece. And then the game was a lot more even, and probably Crystal Palace maybe had a claim that they maybe shaved it in the second half. I don't know about that. Arsenal were relatively comfortable, and eventually get their second goal from Mark Gay, who had an absolute nightmare out there. Bad one for our boy who made the rest of the Premier League 11. Bad start to the season. He was very poor. I like Decore that they picked up in the summer in midfield. If he can do that, perform like that on a consistent basis, um, then he could be a really good find for them in the middle of the park. But the one going back to my point on Arsenal, do I fear them? Not yet. But the most important player for that whole process is Gabriel Jesus, because Gabriel Jesus looked really good, especially in that 20-minute period. His link-up play looked fantastic. His energy, which is a big difference from what you've seen in recent years, especially last season with Lacazette. Jesus' ability to get around the park, both in possession and out of possession, is going to be a huge upgrade, I feel. But the way that I would go into games fearing Arsenal is if Gabriel Jesus has a probably a 25 goal season. If he could get to that level in the league, 25 goals, then all of a sudden Arsenal for me are a totally different prospect. If they can have a bona fide, genuine goal scorer, then they become a fearful team. But right now, until he can get on that pace, maybe after like 12, 15 games and he's already got 12 goals or so, then you start looking at Arsenal. It's like, all right, they've got a goal scorer, and then they've got so much mobility and talent around that. Like I already touched on in the transfer pod, Thomas Partey has to stay fit. If he can't stay fit and they don't have a replacement, I worry for them in any period like that they have to go through. And Saliba looks like a massive upgrade at the back. I'm still not convinced about Gabriel next to him, but I think he'll do a good enough job, if Arsenal get rolling, that they could probably finish top four. But like I say, really high ceiling, because if Gabriel Jesus could do that and be a player you fear and an actual goal scorer for them, then look, at this stage you can't even say that a title challenge isn't out of the running. I know you think about Liverpool with that Suarez in 13-14, they sort of came out of nowhere that season. So that's what it will take. Gabriel Jesus having that kind of effect. And that's hard to say. We hadn't seen it from Suarez yet, to be fair. So it's not out of the realms of possibility to say that he can have that impact. But he needs regular goals for me. And then I would be very excited for a title challenge from Arsenal, or something like that, you know?
Yeah, the I guess the only worry for me as a fan is that I think I said it last year that our starting 11 is almost last year is almost complete. And like our starting 11 from the games that we played against, maybe not that first game against Liverpool. I think, is that the one where Xhaka got no, that was the Carabao Cup where he got the red card. The Nuno Tavares one was the two Nuno Tavares ones was the Anfield one where you guys blew us away 4-0. But in the second half of the season, like we competed with Liverpool and we competed with City as well. But we just couldn't. There just came a certain point in the game where, maybe because we exerted too much energy in the first half or something like that. It was inevitable that as the game got on, we would and that's probably due to inexperience as well, that like we would eventually lose, because there was some close games between Liverpool and City, and I didn't, as a starting 11, I didn't think we were too far off on in terms of competing. But and now the starting 11 has improved as well with Jesus being added, and Zinchenko, I'm not sure whether he'll be starting, because Tierney's still coming back from injury. He's still not fully fit to be starting. And yeah, I believe the starting 11 is good enough to compete with City and Liverpool, but the problem is that once injuries, and injuries are inevitable, if injuries happen to Jesus, who's the main number 9 for Brazil, so he's going to be playing every single game at the World Cup most likely. Partey, who has an injury record. Tierney as well. I imagine he would be the starting left back over Zinchenko. He has an injury record as well. I'm just fearful that injuries will derail the season, sort of like they did last year, and we haven't quite completed our squad. So I think our 11 is complete, but the squad isn't complete yet. That's the only issue that I have there. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I definitely think that's fair, and especially when you factor in Europa League football in it this season.
Yeah, plus that.
That squad depth. The squad depth is definitely going to be pushed to its limit. So, see, that's this other margin for error thing. If we're talking about the highest ceiling of Arsenal, and whether that be challenging or just being in amongst with those top 2, top 3, however it pans out, just being in the chasing pack for a large majority of that season, if they're going to reach those heights, they're going to need luck at this stage, because the squad needs to be fit. You bring up Jesus. For me, he's obviously hugely important, but even more important, I keep saying, is Partey. I mean, if Partey goes out, I don't know who replaces him. He was fantastic in this Palace game. He's such a presence in that midfield, so if anything breaks down, he can win the ball back, or he can commit a foul, or he can delay the play. Very much in sort of that Rodri mold, who we'll touch on a bit later, but just as a really crucial player for Arsenal's whole structure and system and balance, really, in the middle of that park. So, yeah, no, I feel like your fears are definitely valid. I mean, City, I don't have any problems with, but obviously, if reports are to be believed, and this thing's been picking up a lot of momentum, but it looks like Bernardo Silva might be on his way out of City, which I think, while City just have so much talent in there, they have a new toy in Haaland, who we'll touch on later, but it won't be crippling. It will affect their depth. So they might be affected by that in the centre of midfield. And Liverpool, who we'll talk about later as well, but Liverpool don't have that much depth in the centre of midfield either, for me, and they're going to be relying a little bit on luck themselves this season if they're not. And by all reports, they're not looking to add anyone new. So while your concerns are valid, I think they're valid for most of the top clubs. So look, I was impressed with Arsenal. So I think you've got a right to believe, but it's one game in. It's the right start, but the season's so damn long, and this one's going to be even longer with a World Cup jammed in the middle. So there's still a lot to unfold and develop, but a really strong start, and a really good-looking spine with those important players of Jesus, Partey, and Saliba, who I think all three of them will be massive for what they do this season. And then with the flourishes of flair that you've got in Saka and Ødegaard, if they can keep linking up, I think the future's bright, but we'll see, because Arsenal, like I said, they also have the lowest ceiling for me, or the lowest floor. So if they get punched in the mouth and then they don't react in the right way, or they get those injuries you talk about, then we could be talking about a whole different story. But from what I saw from 90 minutes, definitely trending up.
Yeah.
On that.
I
I don't know if you're happy to leave Arsenal now, or you had anything else
I'll just add that.
from the game or anything? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'll just add that I think one more year of experience on that young team, especially since they missed out on top four by 1 point, and like you can look at some of the games, like from last year, like the away loss to Everton, the like, the away loss to Brentford. Like I guess at the start of the season, we weren't going to beat Chelsea or City, so the three losses in a row against them at the start of the season, like there's just certain games where we should have picked up points. I think there was the we lost 1-0 to away to Southampton as well. So there was a couple of those games where had we have had a Jesus or a Zinchenko in there as well, who are title winners, and also the squad having one more year of experience, they probably would have gotten over the line in those games to secure top four. So I think also considering the players that we kept, like I think there was rumors that Liverpool were interested in Saka, and obviously, and there's going to be teams that are going to want Martinelli as well. So if we can keep the squad, that starting 11 together, then next year, like if they can secure top four this year, then next year they can maybe push for a title challenge, perhaps if they add one or two more players. But yeah, it's what you mentioned, injuries to Partey, and I'll add Jesus in there as well. That could derail, I guess the excitement. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now, and we can move on to I guess the fixtures from Saturday.
Well, I was gonna, if we were doing this in chronological order, I was just gonna make a brief stop, and I just wanted to talk about Bayern Frankfurt, which was also a Friday night game in the Bundesliga. As far as Friday night games go, to start the season, I'd have to say Bundesliga 1, Premier League 0, even though I was impressed with Arsenal this game, from Frankfurt, 55,000 people at that stadium there. The flares going off, the whole place is dressed in white. It was something fantastic to see. And then Bayern Munich came through and they just demolished the Europa League champions. I mean, 6-1, I believe, was the final score. And wow, Bayern were definitely, for me, the most impressive team of the weekend to start the season like that against a team that should be probably top 6 in the Bundesliga. I wouldn't quite put them in the top 4 bracket, but they obviously are Europa League champions and come into the season with confidence. But they were just completely outclassed, and they somewhat. It was one of those games, when you watch games and one team's just getting demolished and they just have no answer, and they're just getting killed. Like the team just gets in behind all the time. There's no one can get tight to the ball. So as with any sort of 6-1 result, it's a little bit of both, isn't it? It's one team just not having an answer and just being stunned by what the other team's doing, but it's also the other team playing to that level, and Bayern reached an incredible level in this game. The lit didn't start, which I was a little bit disappointed about. And for me, that's still the major question mark over this team. They had Hernandez and Upamecano at centre back, who I'm not convinced by either of them. I think to be a successful team, you can have one of them, but the one next to him has to be a really solid centre back. So for me and their chances of achieving what they ultimately want, which is the top prize in European football, De Ligt's going to have to be that guy who we saw at Ajax, who was the main centre back who you can partner an Upamecano or a Hernandez next to. For them to be successful at that level, I also think they're going to need Goretzka back, who I think is injured at the start of the season. And he's one with an injury history. I think Sabitzer looked all right in there. This was a game where they weren't really challenged in the middle of the park because and the player who I want to give so much credit to, I mean, Kimmich was great, as he normally puts in a 7 or an 8 in that midfield every week. But Jamal Musiala, was absolutely fantastic in this game. So much energy. Picked up all the pockets around Eintracht Frankfurt's two central midfielders and just outnumbered them every time Bayern had the ball. And always wanted the ball on the half turn, wanted to drive into those spaces, wanted to link up with Muller, with Mane, who, just on a side note, could this be Sadio Mane's revenge season? I kind of want to, yeah, I'll put that question to you. Could this be a revenge season? Because really, when you look at the bones of what happened at Liverpool, it was Liverpool had to choose Salah or Mane because they both needed a contract extension at the same time. They both wanted the big wages, and Liverpool chose Salah and let Mane walk. And Mane has started like a house on fire at Bayern. He looks fantastic in that front four, picking up those pockets with players like Musiala, Gnabry, Muller, Sane when he comes on. So he looks to have made Bayern's front line a lot more dynamic. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Lewandowski and his goal scoring record speaks for itself, but Mane looks to have added another dimension. He scored in both his competitive games for the club. And I reckon he's the kind of guy who would take that personally. And this might be sort of his revenge season for Bayern. So I'm interested to see what you think about that.
Um, uh, I'm not sure if I'd necessarily call it a revenge season. Like, but then also on that same note, like these players that are at the top of the game, they are extremely competitive. But I would say it's probably more down to the fact that towards that second half of the season, Mane was the better player out of Mane and Salah.
Yep.
Watching Liverpool, I was much more impressed with how Mane even changed his game because he started playing as a number 9 as well, rather than just an out and out like left winger, and he was definitely the better player. It will be interesting if Bayern and Liverpool match up in the Champions League. Then maybe we'll see if he becomes like a man possessed and bangs in 3 against your boys. But I don't know, since he's not necessarily competing in the same league, I'm not sure if you can necessarily call it a revenge season, but I think it'll just be more of a continuation of the form that he was showing towards the end of last season.
Well, basically, you just made a key argument for why a European Super League wouldn't actually be the worst thing, because then we could actually see that play out. But
the narratives.
For me, like, yeah, you miss that dimension that they're more than likely not going to play against each other. But really, when we're talking about this level of European football, when we're talking about clubs like Liverpool and Bayern Munich, they are competing against each other. So if Bayern have a deep run, go to the semis or the final of the Champions League, and Liverpool get knocked out at the quarterfinals or the round of 16, then he'll definitely feel vindicated, and he'll feel, well, you chose the wrong guy. You chose him over me, but I'm the African champion. I'm the guy who had the better second half of the season when we were challenging for every title. I'm the African footballer, so I don't know, and I think secretly he is built that way. So I think he'll be motivated. I think he's going to have a big season for Bayern, and I think from what I've seen early, and I know I made my prediction, it was somewhat a throwaway prediction because we're so early in the season, we don't know how this is going to pan out. But I said I thought Bayern would win the Champions League, and I mean, if they play like this, my only question is, can they be tight enough at the back? Can De Ligt be that guy, and can they get Goretzka fit enough for long enough? That's my only concern, because they're very open, they're very energetic, they're very fun to watch. There's no doubt about that. I think Bayern are going to be must-watch TV this year because they look fit and they look like they want to run and play you off the park. I mean, Alphonso Davies, if he's back, he was just running past people for fun in that game. Thomas Muller looks like the same Thomas Muller, and you think, how long has he been around? But he's such an intelligent footballer as well. So they're going to be must-watch TV, but that defensive solidity is where I have my questions when it comes to the elite level. And that will be interesting to watch. But definitely the most impressive team I saw this weekend. So I just wanted to make that pit stop. And then I guess we
But
can
before
talk.
we
And I
go
don't know if you
on,
saw the highlights.
just before we go
Yeah,
on,
go on.
I just wanted and this is something that I actually wanted to bring up. I think last year when I watched Bayern Dortmund, because I think you mentioned it just at the beginning, Bundesliga 1, Premier League 0. This is in terms of the broadcasting. When you were watching, did they show they when I watched, they showed like on-field stats, and like they did like that sort of like augmented reality or virtual reality on the field sort of stuff with stats and runs and also like the camera angles that they use. Like Premier League doesn't do any of that, so I'm not sure if they did it in this game, or maybe it was just because it was Bayern Dortmund that I watched. But like I just want to see if you saw that, or if maybe that was just a one-off or something.
Yeah, I didn't see that in the Bundesliga games. I see that a lot in La Liga
In
games.
La
Where
Liga,
they
they do it as
I think
well.
they've got a partnership with Microsoft, so they like putting those shapes and those triangles and those lines on players and on systems in the La Liga games. I know they like doing that. I've always found the Bundesliga one is more. What they really like is the physical sort of stats. They love like top speed. They love like distance covered. All of those sort of individual physical stats. I know the Bundesliga broadcast seems to go off for a little bit more, and I guess that somewhat speaks to the cultures of football in each different country. But yeah, I didn't notice those augmented reality sort of stuff. But to be fair, I've always liked the Bundesliga coverage. We got Derek Ray as the commentator with Didi Hamann on that one, so I think he's a really good commentator. So that was good fun in that Friday game. That was
Yeah.
really good to watch.
You know what? I this is just a side note as well. I really love that that camera where it focuses in on like the player, and then like the crowd is like sort of like blurred. Like I really love that they do that in La Liga, and I'm pretty sure they started doing that in Bundesliga. I'm not sure what that camera lens or whatever it's called, but
Yeah, I think that's got like some crazy amount of K or something. It's so crisp, those
yeah.
pictures. I know the ones you're talking about. They're
But
awesome.
like
They use
Premier
them in the
League,
golf and stuff
yeah,
as well.
Premier
And the
League don't do
basketball
it.
is really good.
Yeah, like what?
I know it's crazy that they don't have those cameras.
But no, but even that, like, just like because Premier League don't really do the augmented reality. It just seems like Premier League's like production is sort of stuck in the mid 2000s or something. Like they haven't added anything new over the past like 20 years. Like they haven't even added this camera, like, or this camera angle. Like, so Premier League, up your game, bro.
Watch this space. Other leagues coming for your corner. Definitely, they got to get that camera though. That
Oh
camera's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
They have to get the camera.
Yeah, just as a bare minimum. But anyway, like you were, who's next on your agenda?
Yeah, I guess it's time to go to the Saturday fixtures, and this is a fixture that I was not looking forward to talking about. The early kickoff from the Premier League. Liverpool travelling to Fulham. What a disappointing start to the season. I mean, really. Really bad performance. Really frustrating. One of those ones as a fan that you maybe get to like half an hour in, and you just don't really want to watch it anymore. Like you feel yourself just torturing yourself watching this game, because you know that your team can play so much better. You know that your team's getting outplayed by the opposition who they shouldn't be getting outplayed by. It's just a really frustrating experience to watch a game like that. I'm sure you've had it countless times in watching Arsenal, especially maybe the last like 6 or 7
Yeah,
years.
I'm an Arsenal fan, dude.
But yeah, super frustrating. Like I touched on earlier, that midfield did not work at all. They couldn't receive the ball off the defenders. They couldn't get the ball to the attackers. The attackers, I mean, Firmino continues to just look a little bit past it for me, look a little bit off it. I'm sure he'll have a few good performances this season, and we love Bobby, but I don't think that's the way forward for him to be starting. Um, Allison, awful for the goal. Trent, awful for the goal. Henderson, awful for the goal, gets his foot stood on and decides to stay down instead of getting up and getting back into the play. Just a really, really disappointing start to the season for Liverpool. But look, if you could take any silver lining away from it, I actually thought it was pretty important that we didn't lose that game, and that could have been a game that we lost the way we played, because I don't think the title race is going to be the same pace as it was last season. I think you can lose 3 or 4, maybe not 5, but 4 maximum this season. I feel is how many you can give yourself, and if you already burn one of those 4 losses on the opening day of the season, well, you've given yourself a huge mountain to climb. And look, four might not even be a guarantee because City do have the ability to just rattle off wins. Um, so yeah, I thought it was important they at least drew the game, which they ended up doing. Um, honestly, I think when you watch Liverpool, and this will be interesting to see how this develops because oddly enough, Hmm. I don't know. I hesitate to say this, but oddly enough, I think Liverpool have a lowish floor as well. They've obviously let Mane go, and they haven't upgraded or reinforced that midfield. I mean, when they were looking to change the tide of the game, they needed to bring on James Milner, and James Milner was pretty good actually. He did do a lot to sort of change the tide of that game. To his credit, but I don't really want to be trusting that substitution in times where we're not playing very well and we need it to be changed around. So I think that's one to look for. And if that midfield, Henderson looks like a year older, there's no doubt about that. Thiago was never the most mobile, and if you ask him to do too much defensive work, I don't like that. Um, so that midfield story I think is one to look at. And I mean, Allison makes a mistake and Van Dijk makes a mistake. And if that happens, Liverpool concede goals, as you saw on the weekend. Because, like we spoke about last season, they trust, particularly those two, to not make mistakes. So, and by the way, that penalty, I don't know what we're doing. Like, if we're not using VAR for the season, let's just come out and say we're not using VAR. But if we're using it, I just don't think that's a penalty ever. There's like no contact. Mitrovic sells it. I could see why the referee gives it in the moment, but if you have the opportunity to go back and look at it, you've got to go back and look at it and say there's not enough contact there for a penalty. If he has touched him, he's barely touched him. So we're either using it or we're not. If we're not, great. Like I'm happy to not use VAR. Fine. And look, don't get me wrong. You could hear in the tone and the way I was speaking about the game that I didn't even think Liverpool deserved a point from this game. To be fair, so in the end, I guess a draw is an unfair result, and they needed that penalty for it. But I mean, if we're looking at it, come on, let's not allow that to stand because that's a huge dive, and I can believe that they let it stand because they want to heighten the threshold to overturn. But they also spoke about all weekend about heightening the threshold of contact before we give fouls. So they contradicted themselves in that way just there. But yeah, all in all, really disappointing from Liverpool. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts about what I've just said or follow ups to Liverpool's maybe chances in the season or what to look for.
Just in regards to the penalty, like you probably saw different angles and slowed down on like the live coverage. On the highlights, they only showed it in real time. I don't think they showed like different angles or slow mo of it. But I think it was think Souness said that there was contact on the knees, which he accepts that like it is a penalty. And like I think some other pundits also said that it was a penalty as well, because of the clash of the knees. So, but again, I didn't see any different angles. But I think this sort of goes back to what we may have spoken about in some other podcasts, where when you put things in slow-mo, they look so much worse than what they do in real time. In real time, when you're like, and don't forget, like these players, like they have max speeds of like, a lot of them have max speeds of like 30 kilometers an hour or whatever it's measured in.
Not Alexander Mitrovic.
Look, maybe on the first 5 yards, he probably just has, he does have that burst. That maybe not 30 kilometers, but like he has that burst, and like any slight bit of contact is enough to, and like we've played, like any slight contact when you're traveling at speed is enough to take you down. So look, again, not seeing different angles, I can't really comment that much. From real time, it definitely looks a penalty. But what you said, like if your two rocks in Alisson and Van Dijk are making mistakes, then you deserve to lose or draw. And I was sort of thinking about this, and it sort of goes back to what I think, like some of those Fergie stories. Fergie used to put, I think, the whole fixture list up on the wall, and and also the other team's fixture list, and he would like predict where teams would pick up points or drop points throughout the season. So he would then predict like the ladder, and from what I've heard, like he was almost always spot on, like maybe just a couple of points off. And it also ties into my Arsenal Crystal Palace point, where we picked up 1 point out of 6 against Crystal Palace last season. A team like Fulham, newly promoted, Liverpool need to be picking up 6 out of 6 points throughout the season, and you've already dropped 2 points to them. And there's teams like that where you need to be picking up 6 points, and you can't be affording to draw, and especially considering how tight things are between Liverpool and City. Like the last couple of seasons, barring your Premier League season and also the next season where you lost Van Dijk and you barely made fourth, you guys have always been like 1 or 2 or 3 points between each other, between some of those runs. And yeah, you can't be affording to drop points to teams like Fulham, even if it is away. And also, I'll just add, I did like the shithousery from one of the Fulham social media team when I think Klopp was saying that like the pitch was dry or something like that, and complaining about the pitch. And then the Fulham social media team, they put up a picture of like just this nice lush green pitch. I think it was taken before the game, and like it was, and all the sprinklers were on as well. So I just like that nice little touch from them.
Yeah, they can do what they want. They can have their moment. Ultimately, they're Fulham and we're Liverpool, so they've got to take their shots at us. But it's a compliment, really, if you want to take those kind of shots. I don't know. That shithousery, sometimes it can be funny. That's pretty funny, but I don't know. It's kind of gone too far with that whole "give me sport" bullshit and stuff like that. This clickbait stuff, it's kind of annoying after a while, but that's obviously because Liverpool didn't get full points against Fulham, and I'm still bitter about it. So
yeah, but
they can have their moment in the sun for now.
But the Klopp does.
One. We know
Klopp does have a history of
we
making big things out of nothing, and from what I've heard, like, you know, having a slightly drier pitch does slow down the ball a little bit, and considering Liverpool like to play at a very fast pace, it doesn't suit their style. But you mentioned like I don't think you used the word lethargic, but like your midfield looked a little slow. So maybe the dry pitch, if the pitch was in fact dry, maybe it actually did suit them.
Oh, doubt that. The pitch, to be fair, looking at it, the pitch looked not as slick as what you see from Premier League pitches. and you could kind of tell when the ball bounces, it just doesn't skid on like it normally does. But
Mm.
that's neither here nor there. Obviously, if you're a team like Liverpool, you're going to go to places where they're going to do things that slow the game down. So you just got to
Yeah.
deal with that. That's part of being a top side. So I don't think Klopp makes excuses, so to speak, and I don't think he makes a big deal about these things. What I find when I listen to Klopp speak and when he gets interviewed is he just empties out his thoughts. He empties out whatever he was thinking about the topic that was asked. He just every thought that he had in his brain, he just puts it out there. And then obviously you can take whatever clip you want away from that, and then you say, look at all these excuses he was making. Like maybe he should stop doing that if he doesn't want to gain that sort of attention. But at the end of the day, that's Jurgen Klopp, and I don't think he gives a shit. So I just think when he gets interviewed, he just empties out his brain about any information he had on the topic. So sometimes it's obviously to his detriment, but I think it's always pretty fascinating to listen to him speak because he is pretty open like that. You get a sense of what he was looking at and what he was feeling while he was watching the game. But yeah, obviously disappointing performance. I think you're right. You got to be looking to take full points off that, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of pace we're talking about this season. Until I see it, and I know it's been a few seasons now, but I'm just struggling to see that the pace continues to stay at a mid 90 point pace. I wouldn't be surprised if it dropped down to high 80s, 87, 88-ish, is what you normally see. So, especially and I guess this takes us to the next game, but with the improvement of a team like Tottenham, who honestly I wasn't very impressed with in the first 20 minutes, and Southampton took a lead away. And I looked at the team sheet and I just thought, that's exactly the same Tottenham team as the second half of last season. And yeah, they were good enough to get into the top four second half of last season, but they weren't special. They weren't great. But then the longer the game went on, the more I realized the three players who were really key, and obviously I'm taking out Son and Kane in this because if Tottenham are going to accomplish anything, they are the biggest keys. And that's not breaking ground or interesting anyone to say that. But the three players who sort of played the majority of that run in, where they finished fourth, and the players who really helped turn it around for me were the two new signings, Kulusevski and Bentancur in midfield, and then Romero at centre back. I thought those three players were probably the most important players to sort of Tottenham's form being good enough to get into the top four at the end of last season. And I thought, obviously, Kulusevski, if you look at the highlights, he was fantastic in the game. Kane and Son don't get on the score sheet, but it's fine because they win 4-1 anyway. Sessegnon at left wing back looked really good. I think there's a potential for upgrade at the right wing back position. I'm still not convinced by Emerson Royale, and I'm not too convinced by Højbjerg either. I think they can upgrade the central midfield, but for now, I think Højbjerg is serviceable. It'll be important for Longley to come in and sort of look good from the start if he does come in. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to think of Tottenham just yet because Southampton have a good chance of being in a relegation battle this season. I don't think it's breaking ground to say that. So it'll be interesting to see what type of team Tottenham actually beat and what kind of inferences you can make from this result. But yeah, good start from Tottenham. 4 goals, always nice, and none of them for Kane and Son. And then the importance of those players down the spine. And then adding the squad depth as well, having Richarlison still to come back. Even Basuma doesn't start. Longley, like I touched on, didn't start. If I was looking for an upgrade at that right wing back position, I'd probably look to Leverkusen because I caught their game against Bayern this weekend, and Frimpong at right back. He plays a right back for Leverkusen, but I think he'd make a fantastic wing back. So much energy, can get up and down. Probably would link up nicely with Kulusevski with the overlap. So I think an upgrade there is what Tottenham should be looking at over the next 20, 21 days, whatever we've got left of the transfer window. So
I
yeah, that's
I don't
probably the
think they
big
upgrade.
position.
Well,
Yeah,
they
go
already have. They bought
I don't think they will
Jed
either.
Spence.
I think they should look.
They bought Jed Spence.
Yeah, that's not an. Yeah, that's fine. That's not an upgrade though, is it?
Yeah, it's
It's
not
a
an
player for
upgrade,
the
but yeah,
future.
look,
It'll be interesting. Maybe he becomes an upgrade as the season
yeah,
goes
he
on. But
might.
right now, looking at it, he's one to for the future years really. Whereas I think I watch and like Frimpong's playing in a team that qualified for the Champions League last season, so he's somewhat proven. It'd just be interesting to see what kind of price. But I'm with you. I don't think they will upgrade, but I think they should look to because the longer you go on and the longer you rely on Emerson Royale, the less convinced I am by you. Unless he absolutely has a sort of Ramsdale season like he did last season, because I wasn't convinced by Ramsdale either. So that's just an interesting little, I think, weeks for Tottenham.
Wait,
Maybe it won't be.
you weren't convinced by Ramsdale overall, or just at the beginning,
No,
like
going into his Arsenal move, I
going
had
into
no
it?
idea
Yeah.
why Arsenal paid so much money for a keeper who I thought was pretty shoddy at Bournemouth and Sheffield United. But he's somewhat changed my mind on that,
Mm.
and hopefully he could go. Well, hopefully for Arsenal, he could continue to go to the next level and be part of a team that can challenge for things.
Just quickly while we're on,
Yes, I don't know if you.
while we're on
Yeah,
Ramsdale, do you, England's number one for the World Cup?
Uh, It'll be interesting because it seems like Southgate loves to play Pickford. Sometimes I don't know why. At least sometimes he can show somewhat why he's trusted, but it's a weird one. But at the same time, now we've got Nick Pope playing at Newcastle. I'm sure Eddie Howe will encourage him to somewhat come out of his comfort box and play a little bit more with his feet. And if he can show to do that, I think then you have a discussion between Ramsdale and Pope, because I prefer Pope for anything aerial. And if he can somewhat at least play with his feet, he probably won't be Ramsdale, because Ramsdale's quite good with his feet, although he does have moments. He had a moment against Crystal Palace where he whacked one into the pressing player and the ball could have gone anywhere. So I think as it stands, I would put him as number one on his form, even though I don't think his form's quite as good as it was that mid part of last season. I don't think he's quite at that level anymore, but obviously we're only one game in. But even late last season coming into this season, it'll be interesting to see if he can get back to that sort of that level, because if he's at that level, he's definitely, for me, number one. But I don't think he's quite there. So if Pope can emerge, I would look at a battle between those two. But at the same time, I know Southgate loves Pickford, so it might not matter.
I guess we'll find out in about 3 months' time when the squads are finalised.
Yeah, and I guess we should probably do when we see things like that for national teams, we should probably bring it up in build up for the World Cup, which will be nice and fun. But I guess, do you have any thoughts on Tottenham? Do they worry you? Do they concern you that they finish fourth above Arsenal and they seem to have improved going into the season?
A lot of it. I think Tottenham I think they're still too reliant on Kane and Son. So if they still get, Kane didn't hit 20 goals last season, did he? But Son did. I think Son did hit 20 goals, right? He hit 21. Yeah. So if Son and Kane both have 20 goal seasons, then yeah, I think they finish third, to be honest. But considering they can score 4 goals without Kane and Son hitting the net, then albeit against Southampton, who for some people are actually relegation candidates. I don't know. We'll have to see. They definitely did improve their squad, but not necessarily their starting 11 with their transfers. I think Basuma is probably the only, I guess, signing that would go right into the starting 11, perhaps. But
maybe Longley as well.
Yeah, and maybe Longley. So there's only those two, but like Richarlison he's going to be a squad player for them. He's probably going to get like 20 or 30 minutes every game or every second game. But that's only they. But yeah, they improved their squad, so that will help them in the Champions League and fighting in the Champions League and in Premier League. I think third spot is it's not secured, but I think it's like on paper it's probably theirs to give up just because of Chelsea just seems so they just seem like they're a little bit in limbo with everything that's going on with like the ownership and a lot of their defense leaving. And yeah, I'm still not. I still don't have my mind made up on Chelsea. Like for instance, I did last year, like where we thought that they might push on to challenge for the title, and for half the season that they did, and then they just fell off. But yeah, like I think they do finish in the top four, and then I also do think I think Arsenal finish in the top four as well. So that's the predictions at least
Well,
for the two North London clubs.
well, we'll see
But
because
yeah, we'll see.
you gave the perfect segue into the late kickoff on the Saturday, which was Chelsea Everton. And I thought in the build up some really important news given their situation that Azpilicueta had re-signed, and then obviously the massive deal for Cucurella, which will be interesting to see where they use him, because the big thing of note for Chelsea in terms of creating opportunities, much like Liverpool, is the sort of burden and the role that they put on their fullbacks or their wing backs as they use in that system in Chilwell and Reece James. Reece James was floating around a lot in this game from right wing back, looking to come inside, play as a central midfielder almost, sort of bulk up that midfield next to Kante and Jorginho. Chilwell a bit more up and down on the other side, but obviously he gets in for the penalty. Um, so so Chelsea are going to need those two fit, especially without. And what you notice pretty much all game is the lack of a striker. Timo Werner, who could never do it, he's going back to Leipzig by all accounts. I think they're taking like less than half the money that they paid for him, which is just nuts to think. Let's see if he can rejuvenate himself back at Leipzig, but um, that striker role for Chelsea just seems cursed. So you could tell when their wing backs are getting the ball and they're putting crosses in, and there's just no one there for to attack it. This game for me was a game that could have easily been a 0-0, just as easily as it was a 1-0 Chelsea. I thought Chelsea were good enough value to win it. Um, Everton, especially without Calvert Lewin, very toothless. Gordon playing up there, Ali coming on to play up there, just didn't really look like challenging that Chelsea back three. But I mean, you saw it in the game. I think Thiago Silva goes down towards the end of the game. He's getting on in years, and now you're relying on him as Piliqueta. I don't think. While it's good news that he re-signs, I think there's a little bit too much importance on him, especially missing out on Kunde. So that'll be interesting as well to see how much can you rely on those two guys for the season. And then Koulibaly gets injured, and I haven't checked on the update. I don't know if it's serious or not, but he comes off the pitch injured. So that's the last thing you need as a Chelsea supporter, because that guy needs to be fit. And I'm not sure. Last season he had a pretty good record, but he missed some games in the run in for Napoli, which ultimately cost them challenging for the title. So he's never had a great fitness record. So you'd hope if you're of the Chelsea persuasion that he needs to be the rock, much like we talked about with Partey for Arsenal. He needs to be there every step of the way after they've missed out on Kunde. So I agree with you. Definite questions around Chelsea. I mean, they looked good enough in the win. Tactically, they looked fine. I'd be happy to see them go out with a 3-4-3 again, because I thought last season Tuchel tinkered with it a bit too much, started playing back fours, just didn't suit the personnel. I think if you've got to use Thiago Silva as one of them and Azpilicueta as one of them, it has to be a back three. Um, so yeah, where do the goals come from, Chelsea? And is the back three reliable enough And another sort of cheeky storyline to look out for, and I hate to do this. I almost hesitate to do it because I love this player so much, but I don't know if N'Golo Kante is exactly the same player he's been in recent seasons. I just saw the end of last season and the start of this season. It might be a 2 or 3% dip, but when you play at that level and you play to the standard he's played at over these years, that's all it takes for it to be noticeable. And I'm interested to see as the season progresses, is that a dip and is that a permanent dip, or will he find that form and find that sort of influence that he could have on a game that he's had in recent seasons. So Chelsea, definite question marks around it. Again, probably another. Without a striker, I don't see their ceiling being particularly high. I don't think they could challenge the top or the perceived top two of City and Liverpool. Although Liverpool didn't look like one of those teams over the weekend, that's for sure. But without a focal point, without the goals, what are they going to do? You know, even if the back three stay fit, they still need to answer that question. The midfield is, I think, strong enough. Um, so there's a good chance they could finish third this season. There's a good chance they could finish fifth this season. I think that's kind of the variance I see for Chelsea, unless they make additions in the next 20 odd days.
Yeah, look, and I just want to ask you, initially when Sterling was signed, it was a little bit of a weird signing because you thought, where is he going to fit in? Because he's not a number 9 like for instance the Jesus signing for Arsenal, like that made sense. Sterling to Chelsea, that he was never going to play down the middle unless, who knows, maybe Tuchel reinvents him. But yeah, he was always going to be playing wide, and it didn't make sense because they needed a striker like a Lewandowski or even Ronaldo, just playing him up through the middle. But now that Werner's left, does that signing make sense then? And but that still leaves the gaping hole down the middle as well.
Well, to be honest, I was actually, and I buried the lead. I don't know how I went through Chelsea and didn't mention Raheem Sterling, but I was pretty impressed with him in this game. I thought he was definitely the most threatening out of that front three of him, Havertz, and Mount. Um, I think he has the ability to play through the middle. Your comparison we made a couple of weeks ago, we're talking about the age and how I said he reminded me of Rooney because it felt like he'd been around. But your comparison was spot on with that Walcott corollary. I think obviously Raheem Sterling's he's a higher class than Walcott ever probably was, just for where he's played and the influence he had. He was, you could argue, the second best player on those City teams in 17, 18 and 18, 19 that went back to back. So I was impressed with him. He's reaching physically what should be his prime. It'll be interesting to see because he's been playing football for so long whether that is indeed his prime. Much like Rooney, we saw Rooney just sort of fall off after he turned 30, which was just crazy. But maybe the amount of football he played from such a young age had something to do with it. Let's see if the same sort of thing happens to Sterling, or if he can, now that he's meant to be reaching his physical prime, can he keep putting in really top performances, keep getting those goals? He's not the traditional number 9, but maybe we've gotten to the point with Chelsea where they just have to give up on getting a striker, because it's just crazy how none of their striking signings work out. I mean, since Drogba, maybe Drogba cursed the position after he left the club, so that no
Yeah,
one else
probably.
could succeed there. But yeah, it's mental. None of these strikers, Morata, Torres, Werner now, I mean, Lukaku, they've just been terrible since they've come to the
They had
club, which is,
Batshuayi as well,
yeah,
who was
that's why.
also
I
sort of
wouldn't
meant
put
to
him in
be.
that class.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
the
but he
thing
was meant
is,
to be good.
yeah, like Lukaku, even when he was like 7, they signed him as a 17, 18-year-old. He was meant to be like the Drogba replacement. Batshuayi then was also sort of touted as well that he could be the Drogba replacement. But yeah, like it's they had Crespo as well and Shevchenko. You forget those ones. But yeah, like Drogba's the only striker from when Abramovich took over that has worked out for them. That's interesting.
Yeah. And you talked about the Ronaldo signing. I actually think Ronaldo would be a pretty good signing for Chelsea, to be quite honest.
Yeah, because that team is very
But
experienced and mature, so I think he wouldn't have to. The mentality of the team would suit his mentality. It just doesn't seem like it. From what I've heard, when he walked into United, he was, I think, extremely like disappointed, and the way that like the players are so lackluster and not interested in like maintaining performance and all that stuff. So yeah, I think Chelsea would suit his mentality as well and his maturity.
oh, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. We got more on United a little bit later.
When do they come up?
Oh, they come up right, not right at the end. We're going in chronological order. So just to finish off Saturday before we go on to Sunday, I don't think you'll have opinions, but jump in if you do on this. But I watched PSG. Granted, I think it was against Clermont in Ligue 1, but had to watch them. And look, honestly, the first thing that jumped out to me, and it was before the game even started, but the team sheet. The team sheet for PSG for the first time in years, honestly, it was actually their strongest starting 11. They actually started a season with everyone there except for Mbappe. And of course, Mbappe's just going to slot right in when he comes in. But Messi was there. Neymar, I think that was his first league opener that he started since the 17-18 season, if I'm not mistaken, which was just crazy for me to think about. But he was there. He scored. He looked fantastic. Messi, I think, now goes into this role of pretty much a chief provider. I think he's lost a little bit of dynamism. And then obviously the whole system not being tailored to him somewhat diminishes his production in terms of goals. But this is Lionel Messi we're talking about, so he's a fantastic provider, even if that becomes his role, not so much scoring the goals. But I think Neymar's going to have to be the second best player on this team behind Mbappe. If that happens, then I know I predicted Bayern, but in that pod that I recorded with Matti, I sort of wavered between PSG and Bayern because PSG really impressed me. I'm the only, and you have questions about all these top teams, to be fair, except for maybe the one that we'll touch, that we're going to talk about next. But the only question I have on PSG is the midfield. They have Verratti, who I know you're not a huge fan of, and Vitinha, who this is my first opportunity seeing him play. Good enough for Ligue 1, but let's see when they're actually put to the test in the Champions League. And maybe they could get an upgrade at the left wing back position. I think they have Mendes starting, the young lad. Again, good enough for Liga, and let's see what becomes of him when he's really challenged. But Sergio Ramos is back, playing next to Marquinhos and Kimpembe. For me, that's one of the most formidable back threes in Europe, without a doubt. I can wax lyrical about Marquinhos for ages. I just think he's maybe the best centre back in the world. If Ramos can come back and be Ramos, or be 95% of what Ramos was in his heyday, then that just those two alone, and you don't even throw in Kimpembe, that's really formidable. And Hakimi's one of the best playing as a wing back, definitely one of the best in the world. Like a bit like how I talked about Alphonso Davies earlier. Hakimi has much the same physical sort of attributes. He's rapid. He can run through people. He can run around people. When you give him that head of steam playing as a wing back, that's a scary thought. So PSG, I think I'm riding high on PSG this season. I think if Galtier could be the right man and be a stabilizer as the head coach and a relative no one, so that'll be interesting to see how it works out with the Stars. But the fact that they all reported for work, so to speak, at the start of this season, long may it continue, because I know it's just Ligue 1, but that can only be good for their chances of really challenging for the Champions League. The fact that they have a full team there, and if they can stay together for the whole season, then they're just going to build chemistry. And if players this good, when you're talking about a front three of Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi, if players of that level can click, and you're talking about centre backs of Ramos and Marquinhos level, then the sky's the limit for this team. They could win it all this season, but they need that continuity. They need to play together, and they need that togetherness. But I know it's only one game, but from what we've seen so far, this is the best start they've had to a season in a while. So, and just from that aspect, just from the aspect of having the squad together. So I am riding high on PSG. I don't know if you had any input or if you want me to just go straight to the Sunday's fixtures and we'll wrap it up for the review.
Well, I was going to ask who the coach was because I know Pochettino got sacked. But then I remembered that Mbappe was named as the coach. Look, with I honestly think unless that because of the way that the modern game is played now, with especially with that pressing style being the way that the game is played, if that front three doesn't press, they're going to face the same issues as last season, and they're just going to get beat in the round of 16 or quarters, maybe the semis if they get like a lot worse teams up until the semis. But I don't see them winning the Champions League unless that front three can work. Even with like Ramos being fit, because I think he only played like the last 5 or so games of the season last year. But I think it's just going to be the same old PSG, to be honest. Neymar gets injured in January, misses out on the round of 16 in the Champions League because of his sister's birthday, and then that's all she wrote.
Yeah, and it has to be seen to be believed. I just think there's good signs there in the offing, and if those players who are world-class players, if they can click. The only question I have is the midfield, because you bring it up, you say the front three. If they're going to succeed, the front three need to do some sort of defensive work. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, the body language that I've seen from Neymar has been good. I think he'll need to continue this and continue putting in work. Mbappe, when he comes in, that'll be interesting, because how much work do you want Mbappe to do against the ball when you've got that outlet who can just worry an opposition? He does his defensive work just by being out on the pitch, because he just worries the life out of defenders straight away. So even if you're in possession of the ball, you've got to be worried about his position. Messi's obviously a big one, because now that he's not the main man, he definitely has to up his defensive work to at least something, because in recent years he has done absolutely nothing against the ball. Absolutely nothing. It's actually been somewhat disgraceful, to be quite honest. So at least, like, if you want to go into the Messi v Ronaldo, at least Ronaldo somewhat runs when the team doesn't have the ball. Messi does absolutely nothing against the ball. So he needs to at least mark the opposition's holding midfielder or something like that. So, yeah, of course, it's PSG. I understand your reservations. I just think there's good signs from them. I guess I want to put one question to you before I go to the Sunday fixtures. And you look and you compare and contrast my two teams who I'm riding high on to win it all this season in Bayern and PSG. And you look at sort of that youth v experience. I guess if we're just looking at the ceiling of these teams and what they can be, whose do you prefer? Do you prefer what PSG have or what Bayern have with the youth movement?
Bayern. I think Bayern are going to work a lot harder off the ball as well, and they're just going to outwork and outrun PSG. I think PSG, they're just going to be a lazy team in the Champions League, especially when they come up against teams like Liverpool or City or even Bayern. They're just going to get outworked. Unless that front three decides to actually work off the ball, I can't see them progressing against the top teams. And you mentioned that, like, with Mbappe, you don't necessarily mind him running defensively, but I can't accept that when you have other top players like Salah and Mane. Mane, when he was at Liverpool, they were working hard off the ball, and they put as much output on the ball as they did off the ball. And then you had obviously the Man City players like your Mahrez's and your Bernardo Silvas and your Fodens. Their output off the ball was the same as their output on the ball. They weren't given any leeway in terms of, because you're such an attacking threat, we want you to conserve energy so you can put in 10 or 20% less off the ball. I can't accept that.
To be fair, I don't think any of the players you mentioned are as big attacking threats as Mbappe.
Salah.
And I think Mbappe is quicker. I think he's stronger. I think he's got a better technique than Salah. I think that's one of the things that makes Salah so special is his work rate. And don't get me wrong, I love players, strikers in particular, who can lead the press. I'm a Liverpool supporter. That's what Liverpool's DNA is, strikers who do that. So obviously I love that. But look, for Kylian Mbappe, I can make some sort of exception. And let's not forget, in the Champions League last season, he was the guy who scored both home and away against Real Madrid. And it looked like PSG were cruising through to the next round of that. So if you're going to put a percentage of blame on Kylian Mbappe for why they came out of the Champions League last season, I put it at maybe 0.1% if you want him just to run a little bit more. But I can't argue with the results and the threat that he provides. And really, that team should have progressed past Real Madrid, but Chelsea should have progressed past Real Madrid, and Man City should have progressed past Real Madrid. So they're not alone in that fact. I get your point. Don't get me wrong, but Kylian Mbappe, I think, in terms of what he's done for PSG over the years, I think the results speak for themselves, and you could give somewhat leeway. It just depends on who's picking up that slack. Obviously, last season, Messi and Neymar didn't pick up that slack, and that is the bit where you can't get away with it at Champions League level. But I just think the signs are good, so I'll be interested to see how that develops. I know you're definitely more pessimistic on PSG, and unfortunately, the only games that matter for them are the Champions League games. So that's very much a wait and see on that if they can stay together. So I guess it's time to go to the two Premier League games that we saw on the Sunday. And as disappointed, no, I don't even want to take joy in it, to be quite honest. The only thing I take joy in the United Brighton game was well, I take a little bit of joy in it because I know it's early and you can't say anything boldly and you can't say anything for certain. But I thought Ten Hag wasn't the right appointment, and this isn't a good start for him. And also, I'm happy for Brighton because in that first half they were sensational. The second goal was just a thing of beauty. I think it was maybe the goal of the week for what I saw. Just a build-up from Trossard facing his own corner flag, a back heel, and then they're away. They pass the press, and then they pass it through midfield all the way up into the box and then across, and then a good save by De Gea, but a goal by Gross. And look, United, I mean, you can't, and here's the thing when I say Ten Hag was the wrong appointment, I'm not necessarily questioning him as a coach, but I'm questioning why he'd walk into this situation that is going on at United. Why would he go there? Because they haven't been able to attract anyone in the summer, and all you had to do was look at the situation they were in when he signed to think, you know what, this might be a little bit difficult to get some good talent in the summer, because who wants to come here at the moment? They've upgraded no positions on the park. The only thing I'll really criticize him for is leaving Ronaldo out, because without Ronaldo, that team is nothing. Especially when you've got, as he said, a striker shortage at the club. Well, you've got one of the best strikers we've ever seen there. I know he started his career as a winger, but now he's well and truly a striker for me. So how you can leave him out, I don't know. And how you can play Eriksen as the false sort of nine, I don't know either. I was talking to one of our mutual friends, I think before the start of the season, and I think he asked me what would you do with Eriksen, and I told him I would do what they did in the second half and use him as a deep lying playmaker, because I don't think Ericsson is the kind of player I like having in attacking areas. He's not dynamic enough for me, and you somewhat saw it with a half chance United had in the first half where he had to make a run in behind the defence, and by the time he got into the box and had to deliver, he stumbled over his own feet, because I don't think he's that kind of strong runner that he has to put in so much effort, and I just don't think he's dynamic enough to, when it counts, just make a run and then make a play off the back of it. For me, he's a guy who has to receive the ball in a certain way, and then when he has the ball at his feet, his range of passing off both feet, and the way he can strike a ball is what makes him a good player. So I would have looked to play him as a deep lying playmaker, as they did in the second half, and they were much better in the second half. And then what stands out at you straight away is the lack of confidence, the lack of quality. Fred and McTominay in the midfield. My God, man, I thought my eyes were bleeding while I was watching it. It was like a crime against football. They were that bad. McTominay can't receive a ball and look forward. I think Ten Hag was trying to get him out of the way in the build-up play in the first half, but the problem was he was getting him out of the way so that Fred could receive the ball. It's not a great conundrum. I mean, who would you rather have? Yeah, you'd probably rather have Fred have the ball. That's only because McTominay's so damn awful in possession. So Rashford, again, can't make decisions in the final third. It just looks like the same old United, really. There was no... You couldn't look and see that there was a different pattern of play. Lissandro Martinez got absolutely bullied by Danny Welbeck. And Danny Welbeck, by the way, look, I say this tongue-in-cheek. Obviously, this is a joke, but I would be testing him for the PEDs after the game, because I don't know. I had to look up straight away, like Danny Welbeck diet on Google. And then the first result was, Danny Welbeck's gone vegan in the off-season. I'm like, yeah, that explains it. He was everywhere. He looked like throwback Danny Welbeck and then some. But he bullied Lissandro Martinez, which was always my concern. I think people, and like this is the thing, you see it on Gimme Sport, they want to point to the stats like, oh, he's short, but he can win his aerial duels. It's like, yeah, that's great. That's not what I'm worried about because he's short. I'm worried about he's not a presence. He's not a presence against a physical striker. A physical striker who's taller and stronger and quicker than him can outstride him, can outposition him. That guy looked, and especially obviously the contrast between him and Maguire, but he looked like a midget at centre back. And for me, look, I'll have to see it to believe that it's got to work in the Premier League, that you can be of that stature and be an imposing defender. For me, especially given United's problems in the midfield, I'd look at playing him in midfield. I don't know, especially when you have Varane on the bench. I don't know why Varane's not starting. I know he's been uninspiring himself since he's come in, but I trust him over... I know Martinez is the new signing, and I want to fit him in the team because I don't think he's a write-off. And I know this is one game, but I don't see it. I don't see a guy of that stature being a top centre-back in this league. I think La Liga, I think maybe even Serie A, you could get away with it, but in this league, it's physical. It is physical. It's a cliche, but it's true. It's frantic and it's physical, and people want to get about and and it's a lot of body-to-body contact, and I just don't see him holding up. And if Danny Welbeck's going to do that to you, and I guess you can have your input, but one guy, if Danny Welbeck's going to do that to you, I tremor to think of what Erling Haaland's going to do to you if that's the way Danny Welbeck treated you. So I don't know if you have thoughts on United before we go to that last game and Haaland and City.
Look, just quickly while you mentioned Haaland, I'm actually more curious to see how much Haaland embarrasses Maguire rather than Martinez, to be honest, because that's always a fun watch when because maybe I'm just jumping on the on the Maguire hater bandwagon, but I think even last year
He's an easy target, isn't he?
Yeah, but even last year I went in on him. I think I even claimed that I could give him a challenge. Um, but
Easy.
it just seems like it's the same old rotten core or mentality at United, and it's going to take a lot longer than a preseason for Ten Hag to fix it, if Ten Hag is the man to fix it. And like it's definitely not a great opener, considering you're playing at Old Trafford, new coach, and you're expecting some sort of hope, and then the hopes are immediately dashed. And they seemed a little bit. They showed a little bit of promise in preseason, from what I've heard. Like, I didn't watch any of it, but like from what people were saying, like they seemed okay, like in terms of their patterns of play. But that's preseason against like Australian and Asian clubs. Like this is Brighton, and Brighton have showed under Graham Potter that they can play good football. I think back-to-back weeks last year they beat Arsenal. Like, they played Arsenal off the field, and then they beat Tottenham as well. I'm not sure whether they necessarily played Tottenham off the field, but they definitely gave them a really good run. So Brighton are definitely no pushovers and no slouches, and they put United in their place, and I guess they dashed those initial hopes that they had under Ten Hag. And considering that they still can't finalize De Jong. Is it De Jong? Frankie De Jong.
Yeah.
Or Frankie De Jong, however you want to say it. Then that's been going on for 2 months now. Like, they can't.
I think they're going to get him. I don't think he wants to go.
I think Chelsea have now thrown their hat in the mix. But yeah, but what you said, like, he doesn't even want. It seems like he doesn't even want to even go there. Like. And I think I said this on the last pod, or the one before that, on the transfer one that we did. No one wants to. It seems like no one wants to go to United, and then they're being linked with is it Marco or is it Mario or Mario? Marco Natsovic, and then and apparently okay. So from what I've heard, that was only meant to be between a boardroom discussion. That story got leaked, so someone within the boardroom or within that sort of player scouting team or whatever, they leaked that story, which then outraged the United fans. So you're now getting leaks from the staff as well. And then they backtracked on the whole negotiation or the whole inquiry, because apparently there was a whole backlash of fans saying that they're gonna cancel their memberships and that. But what business do United have signing a 33-year-old striker when you have a 37-year-old striker in Ronaldo who's I'd say guaranteed to give you 15 plus goals in the Premier League. But it just seems like the same old stuff. They signed Falcao when he was plus 30. They signed Cavani when he was 36. They signed Ronaldo. Ronaldo's in his own special category, but Ronaldo they signed as a 36-year-old. Where's the talent that they can attract, or those gems that they can find? They can't even bring in the gems or the talent. I'm not sure what the hell their transfer policy is, or their scouting policies, but how can Brighton bring in players and the players that they brought in, but United can't attract anyone of the same sort of ilk, or the same sort of, maybe not necessarily the natural talent, but that drive and that determination to win. They can't. They don't have anyone that's willing to run off the ball, it seems. And I'm not sure whether it's just a club mentality or this team mentality or what it is, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take probably this whole season to turn around. Whether Ten Hag is the man to do it or not, who knows? I was going to mention, because you said why would Ten Hag go into such an environment? And you look, this, hopefully this doesn't sound dark or whatever, but those sort of those relationships where either the guy or the girl, they enter the relationship knowing that the partner is, I guess not the best fit for them, or not the best person, and they go in thinking, oh, I'm a good person, I can fix this, or I can fix them. Maybe it was that sort of same sadistic sort of mentality where he's like, I've shown I'm a good enough coach. I also want to try and turn around this team that's rotten, and if I can do this, I will be recognized as one of the best coaches in the world as well, one of the best managers in the world. Like, who knows what his motivations were, but you could probably make that sort of analogy to to like those toxic sort of relationships. But it could just end up like bursting in his face, where he could end up sort of slightly ruining his reputation, then having to go to a lesser club to rebuild his reputation before finding another big job. But also I'll just finish with, I've been watching a lot of that like Sky Sports stuff with like Carragher and Neville and all that. And Neville keeps on mentioning that, like, I don't know how the hell Neville thinks that United are a better top four chance than Arsenal. Like, he keeps writing Arsenal off. I don't know if it's maybe just his United bias, but like, he's meant to be one of the best pundits on TV, and he is so blind to the fact that United have a long road ahead of them, and Arsenal are already, I'd say, probably one and a half transfer windows away from completing their squad, and United have a whole structure of club structure to change, which is a lot harder than what Arsenal did, because Arsenal did that initially when Arteta came in by clearing out all, like, he's cleared out pretty much the entire squad that he inherited, and he's done that in 3 years. So Ten Hag is going to have to do the same thing, and if it took Arsenal 3 years, it's going to take United 3 years as well.
No, that's ludicrous to put United above Arsenal at this stage. It's just quite simply madness. But I still, and like, I don't have hope for United, because, like I say, I think they've made the wrong appointment. And I'm glad you brought up Brighton, because they deserve to be mentioned. They were fantastic. But there's two little contrasts before I get, and then I'll touch another point just before I get away from this game. But there's two little contrasts I saw in the game, or not in the game as well, where I thought I was contrasting Graham Potter to Eric Ten Hag, and I was just thinking to myself, you know what? Graham Potter could probably deserves to be in that seat as much as Eric Ten Hag. I get the fact that he's won league titles, but that's the Dutch league. I don't want to shit on the Dutch league, but it's still the Dutch league. And you were with Ajax, undoubtedly the biggest club in that league. So you performed to expectations. And then when you made the Champions League semi-final, that was fantastic. But you had two, and I know they haven't fulfilled it yet, but what were perceived at the time generational talents in De Ligt and De Jong, who still need to fill those shoes. But that season, they were playing like generational talents. Those two were fantastic in that run. And then obviously you were able to reinvent it. You looked pretty good in the Champions League last season. But like, what's the path for these other managers to get to a big club like United if they're just going to go and appoint a Ten Hag, who I think is the wrong guy for the job? But I don't think United see it that way, because the other point I wanted to touch, or the other comparison before I go into that point, was, and this goes back to your England point, and you asked about goalkeepers, but Lewis Dunk versus Harry Maguire. If I'm playing three at the back for England, I'm not sure that I'm not picking Lewis Dunk over Harry Maguire as the central centre back. I think he's been somewhat underrated for years now. That Brighton team have been in the Premier League, I think this is their 5th season in the Premier League. He's been a pivotal part of all of that. And when he plays next to two other centre-backs, as he does at Brighton, and this is why I think Potter is just as deserving as Ten Hag to be in the job, because he plays to players' strengths. He doesn't come in and say, we're going to play this system and people are going to have to adapt to it. No. If I've got players who have these particular qualities, I'm going to make a system around that. And he sees it with Lewis Dunk. He sees that guy's not the most mobile. So I don't want him as one of a two. But if I put him in the middle of a three, he's protected. And then we can use his composure, his determination, and his range of passing to our benefit. And I see Harry Maguire and Lewis Dunk playing very similar sort of roles. But United have been so against playing with a back three because they see it as being defensive. And that's the other point I wanted to touch on. The right man for the job for me would have been an Antonio Conte last season because I think the pieces he had at that time as well would have lended themselves perfectly to playing a 3-4-3, if you want to call it, a 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it. I think if you have Maguire with more protection as a central centre back, now you've got more mobility. You could probably reinvent Aaron Wan-Bissaka as a right centre back. It just depends on if his confidence is completely shot, and that might be the case for all of these United players at this point. Um, but I just think it's time that they could start. And I already touched on Ericsson. If Ericsson's going to play as a deep lying playmaker, if you have three centre backs behind him and then two central midfielders either side of him, you've given him all the protection he needs, and then maybe Fernandez as a second striker off Ronaldo, so that those two can form a partnership. And Fernandez, who likes to float around anyway, give him that opportunity and that freedom to float. So I just don't know if they've ever put players in the right positions to succeed. And I don't see Ten Hag being the man to do that either. So and it's because it goes back to this sort of, and you touched on it with the Neville comments, this sort of arrogance that they have that they're Man United. Well, you aren't that Man United anymore. This is not that Man United. This is a team that, if they're not careful, they're going to be waiting a long time to get back into that elite level of English football. So the first thing you need to do is be competitive. And in that first half against Brighton, they were nowhere near it. And that was Brighton, and that was Old Trafford, and they got played off the park. So you're definitely right. It's ludicrous to put Arsenal above there, and that is a long journey. We'll see if Ten Hag will be around long enough to complete his vision, because maybe his vision is good enough, but it's going to take some time because he's going to need a complete new squad, and United have to pretty much admit that they've thrown all these hundreds of millions of pounds like straight down the toilet because some of those signings, I don't see many of those players staying in this team under Ten Hag. To be quite honest, the players that he inherited, and they paid him big money. So United, same old United. Feels like we didn't even have an off season. We're talking about the same things with them, just a different guy in charge. So let's go across to the other side of Manchester and the team who I don't know. I know it's one game. I don't want to overreact, but it's just hard for me to see anyone challenging this team this season. They've just, and I've made this point on the last two pods, so I don't need to make it again. But they've added a young Erling Haaland to an already fantastic squad, a fantastic team, and all of that team have bought into him coming into the club. And if he stays fit, how do you stop him over a 38 game season? He's just going to score 25, 30 goals and a dimension that, by the way, they didn't need because they were already champions, but they got, and they've got the second best young striker coming through. So I'm scared of this team. I guess touching on what they did in the game, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to rave about this. They tucked Kyle Walker and João Cancelo right in field next to Rodri, and the centre backs are actually playing more split than usual, as I guess. And West Ham was so foolish for falling into this, and I can't believe no one saw it. But when Man City do something like that, when they tuck their fullbacks right into midfield, and I mean right in, they were, you wouldn't have even been able to recognise that they were the right and left back. But your alarm bells as the opposition must be ringing, and you must be thinking, if they're doing something weird, they're doing it to gain an advantage somewhere else. And West Ham's wide players followed the fullbacks in field, which was exactly what City wanted the whole time because now Kevin De Bruyne is popping up in pockets. Ilkay Gundogan's popping up in the other pockets where the West Ham wide players weren't cutting off that supply to them because they were right infield. You had Grealish keeping the width on one side, you had Foden keeping the width on the other side, and then your back four so stretched to deal with that. Now Haaland has room to move, and both the goals come from that. De Bruyne picking up in a pocket in the second half and playing through Haaland, who finishes, and Gundogan picking up in a pocket and Haaland making a run against that stretch back four and Fabianski bringing him down, or Areola at that stage. Sorry. So look, West Ham were completely bamboozled by it. I don't understand why, because Guardiola's been doing this for years, bringing the fullbacks in. If Kyle Walker wants to receive the ball as a central midfielder, I'm saying great. Let's let him receive the ball there because he has not been brought up to play and know where the pressure is in the center of the park. I know he's a great footballer and I know he's a great right back, but if he receives the ball with his back to any players, let's press him from the back because he's not used to that. So let's let him receive the ball there. What's he going to do? But instead, they man mark and they leave all that space for De Bruyne and for Foden in particular down that side. So I just thought it was super naive by West Ham. But obviously, Guardiola is such a great manager. He can throw out those wrinkles, and that's good enough to win you games like that when teams get bamboozled by it. So they're scary, and Haaland's scary, and I think everyone was enamored by Liverpool last season because they were so happy someone was challenging City. Look, I know it's one game, there's lots to come, but at this stage, I don't know who's challenging that team with that addition. It's just a scary proposition.
City, they look good. What can I say? And it's funny how in the Community Shield people were writing off Haaland already. Then he pops up with 2 goals. But then again, if you're going to write him off in the Community Shield, you then can't necessarily hype him up just based off of another one performance, even though he grabbed 2 goals. But I think once City learn to play with him and learn to play around his runs, and they build that sort of chemistry, especially if De Bruyne and Haaland, if they create that link up, that's going to be frightening if they can get on the same page. And it was interesting. I think it was either Keane or Carragher or someone mentioned that you talked about the naivety of West Ham and everything like that, but for the past 2 or 3 seasons, City and Liverpool haven't necessarily played with an out-and-out striker, and now that Liverpool bought Nunez and City bought Haaland, they're now playing with an out-and-out striker. So they mentioned that perhaps teams have sort of slightly forgotten to play against that sort of out-and-out striker, at least when they're playing against City. And I guess it does also give them that different dynamism and different outlet, considering that they would play with 6 midfielders, and now they're playing with 4, 5 midfielders and a striker. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see whether Haaland can build on that chemistry with his midfielders. But from seeing in the initial actions of him, at least from the highlights, he definitely looks a presence.
If you're a Premier League manager and you're forgetting about Erling Haaland, you should hand in your resignation right now.
It's not necessarily that. It's more the runs and everything.
Yeah, I get your point, but that's you've had. I know he's young, but you've still had years to look at how good this guy is and what his strengths are. So you can't be doing that. But I agree, it adds a new dimension to both these teams, but particularly City. The last thing I wanted to touch on this game was obviously Erling Haaland. We've already waxed lyrical about him, but my God, Rodri was an absolute monster in this game. He was everywhere. If he got in front of you, you can't get past him. He's that type of, like I said with Partey, but he's he's the type of guy who I love in Premier League football because he's that presence, or in football in general. I don't need to put the qualifier of Premier League on it. It's just football in general. I love having physical presence because, like, if you're an attacking player and you look up and I'm one on one with this guy, I don't fancy my chances. This guy's a man mountain, and he's pretty mobile as well, and he can play football. So I thought he was absolutely immense for them. Obviously, they got the backup of Calvin Phillips. I don't know what Calvin Phillips is going to do because this guy's already shown himself to be pretty durable, as well as maybe the best holding midfielder in the world. So, what are you going to do? You're going to twiddle your thumbs until you get into that team. It's unlikely that he's not old. Rodri's not old. He's still got years ahead of him. So, um, I just wanted to touch on him because I thought he was absolutely immense. And I guess as well, we already touched on it, but I don't know, the way they played against West Ham, I don't know how. It's hard to say because I don't want to say it's not going to be a big loss, but if they lose Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan's a fantastic central midfielder. We know how good Kevin De Bruyne is. So maybe, like I said at the start, it's probably just for depth reasons. But he's going to be a big loss for the Premier League because Bernardo Silva, like we talked about last season, he was absolutely fantastic and a joy to watch. And um, I guess I would say I kind of hope it's not true, but at the same time, I'm so interested by what Barcelona are doing that that's going to be fun to watch over there anyway. So it just adds something, a level of intrigue to another level of intrigue to Barcelona because honestly, Barcelona have actually signed just world class players. And if that clicks, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Either way, they're going to be must watch TV, especially with the circus around the club as well. Um, so yeah, that could be fun, and it could be detrimental to City's depth. But as we stand right here and as we see it right now, City are a very scary, very formidable proposition for this upcoming season.
Just in relation to the Barcelona topic, I don't know how they're gonna sign Bernardo Silva because like they still owe wages to Frankie De Jong, and then on top of that, I think I've read something that like they're struggling to actually register, like Lewandowski and a bunch of and like Rafinha, like they because of the whole way that the financial fair play is structured in La Liga. I think we mentioned this on the previous pod. It's something in regards to like a percentage of the club's revenue that like player wages can't exceed that or something. So apparently they're struggling to register their new signings. So how the hell are they going to bring in Bernardo Silva if they can't even register like Lewandowski and stuff like that? So yeah, it's just a circus over there. It just seems like it's a circus.
It's fun to watch. That's for sure, and hopefully, obviously, they could get those players on the pitch if they do buy them because can't think of much worse than being deprived of their talents. Some of those players that are over there. So no, I can't wait for La Liga to start and see how that Barca Real rivalry develops this season. Um, and that's the beauty. I've watched so much football from this weekend, but two of the five major European leagues haven't even started yet. So exciting times ahead still. But I've been through everything that I've watched over the weekend. I hope that I've helped fill in the gaps from you not being able to watch. And I guess this would be a good point to leave the pod, and then maybe we'll be back to do a preview of what we're going to see on the weekend, or if there's not enough to talk about, we might do that and might do a second team if we have the time. But if not, we'll be back next week to wrap up what we saw last week. But Nev, for me, it's been a pleasure. Good to have you back. Hope obviously the trip went well, even if you did have to run for that bus at the start. But good to have you back. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys again next time when we speak to you. Bye, everyone.